Hey BookTube, this is Caitlin from my channel Bandy's Books, and I am just here to do a weekly update. I try to do these pretty much every Sunday. I didn't get to one last week because I was in San Diego and we left on Sunday to do our drive home, and so we were just kind of like chaotic Sunday morning. But I am here to do my last update of June, and I have quite the update. I got a lot of reading done this week. And I have some really great books that I'm hoping to get to in the next week, as well as a handful of channel updates. So let's just jump into it. A lot to talk about. So in terms of life, things are going well. I am finally at the end of my recovery phase, and I am having my final checkup on Monday. Well, not my final checkup, but my like post-surgical appointment where they'll basically let me know if everything's healed up well enough for me to resume life. So that is very exciting. I go in tomorrow at 1:45, and hopefully the doctor will give me the A-OK to start working out and to start working again. So I will be hopefully in the next week or two transitioning back into a normal lifestyle. I am really anticipating that just because I'm going stir crazy. I haven't been able to work out for like 2 months, and I'm a very physically active person. We usually rock climb, we hike, we camp, we bike, we do a lot of stuff. And so not being able to do any of that for a couple months has been rough. So fingers crossed that all goes well tomorrow and I am able to get back into a little bit of my more normal routine. I probably still won't be able to like rock climb or do any major hiking for a while, but at least I can start kind of upping the physical activity level. And I'm also hoping that that means that I can get back to work soon. Probably be modified work. I won't be able to start like lifting heavy again right away. And I'm also probably not going to be able to do like my normal 12-hour days and things like that for a bit because I'm going to have to rebuild my endurance and whatnot. But at least I'll be able to probably do like 50% of my normal. So I think I'm going to just like do some part-time weeks and then kind of go to 75% and then all the way back up to full time. So hopefully by the end of July, I'll be back to my normal full-time schedule. It was also my birthday last week. June 21st is my birthday. So we went home to San Diego, had a really good time. We took it nice and easy because, I could only do so much. I'm still in that, like I said, in that recovery point. So I'm cognizant of not trying to overdo it and like damaging my surgical incisions and things. So what we did end up doing is spending a lot of time with my parents and my best friends. We ate in some really good restaurants. My dad cooked some really good meals. My mom and I visited 9 indie bookstores in San Diego, which was a lot of fun. We just did like 1 or 2 a day so that I didn't overdo it. And it was kind of cool because while we revisited a few old favorites, we went to a bunch of bookstores that I hadn't been to for either a really long time or ever. So that was nice getting to check out some different places. And I found so many good books. I mean, how do you go wrong? But like really, I ended up bringing home quite a few books. So that's led me to this week, which was pretty chill. A lot of just kind of downtime recovering from all the energy expended on my trip to San Diego. Trying to get in a last little bit of rest to kind of push myself over that edge in terms of healing. And then catching up stuff around the house. One of my goals for this time off was not only to get like well within my body, but was also to kind of like declutter the house, get everything organized. Because, day-to-day life, Oz and I both work full time. We have a pet. So sometimes I don't have time to like sit and like methodically organize and do all the things that I want to do. So this week, now that I'm feeling well enough and I'm close to the very end of this healing, I figured this was a good time to do the decluttering. So I completely redid my bookshelves this morning. I took everything off. I cleaned out all, well, I guess I started yesterday. Took everything off, cleaned them off, reorganized everything, pulled a bunch of books that I think I'm just probably honestly not going to read for donations, organized my TBRs for the next 4 months. And then I'm working now on the bedroom, which is where I keep all my series. I'm going to do basically the same thing, reorganize all those shelves. I tore my kitchen apart, reorganized all the kitchen cabinets, the refrigerator and the freezer. And then I have a couple more like closets and things that I want to do by the end of this week. But it's kind of nice just like getting into that mindset of just getting the whole house organized and back into like a really happy place. So the bookshelf organizing was fun. I recorded it all in like time lapse so I can make a video about it later. But yeah, the shelves are looking great. I'm really happy with them. And I picked out a TBR for July, August, September, and October, full of really good books. So I'm really excited about the next 4 months of reading. And last night we went to a friend's birthday party. So I have 2 friends who are both turning 50 this month, and they're married. They had a collective birthday party. They hired in a caterer. So that was like the first really big social thing that I got to do this month. And that was nice. It was nice to see a bunch of my hiking buddies, kind of get to see everybody all dressed up, enjoy some good food, and relax a little bit. So yeah, I think I'm going to have one more week of just kind of taking it easy and resting and maybe starting to work out. And then we'll be back to transitioning back into work and stuff. So that's everything on the personal front. On the channel front, so lots going on starting July 1st. I filmed my TBR video, so that should be up tomorrow. I have some updates for like the halfway through the year point. So I'm going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag. I'm going to be doing my favorite books of the year so far, my least favorite books of the year so far. And then I intend to do a look back on my book of the month predictions for the last 6 months. So that'll basically just say like how accurate I was based on the predictions that I made. And yeah, aside from that, I have some reviews, some recipe videos, things like that coming up. I'm not going to say stuff concretely here because it feels like every time I give like a concrete posting schedule, I jinx myself. But I do have a lot of content shot. The last 2 weeks, we've been filming a ton of videos and I've been working on getting things edited. So hopefully things will start to smooth out. Now, in terms of, one other thing with the channel. So this month, me and Jamie Kate hosted our first ever episode of the Backlist Book Club. This is a book club that we're going to be hosting bi-monthly on BookTube. And it is basically themed around books that have been published 5 years ago or older, but not quite classics. So basically like things that you picked up because they were new releases at the time, got excited about, and then they kind of sat and languished on your bookshelves. And, you know, she and I both have problems with that where like we have books that, you know, we anticipate reading and then they get pushed back by other books. And so we created this book club to deal with that. And so this month we read My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. So that was very exciting. We enjoyed it. We had a chat on Friday night and had a couple people pop in and discuss the book. It was a really good discussion. If you've already read the book and you want to hear what we had to say about it or what our commenters had to say about it, I definitely suggest checking that video out because we talked about it in pretty good depth, I think. So our next edition of that will be in August. However, I'm going to be putting up a poll for it tomorrow. So tomorrow the poll will go up with 2 books from my bookshelf and 2 books from Jamie Kate's bookshelf. And then everyone that's interested can vote on which book interests them the most. And then towards the end of August, I will post a schedule. Towards the end of July, I will post a schedule going into August of like when we're going to start reading, when to be finished with the book by, and when we'll have a live stream discussion about that book. But I will say that the books that we each picked out are pretty fantastic. There is a variety of genres, variety of nationalities, some really different topics. So it'll be interesting to see which one wins. And that leads me into my reading this week. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I had gone to San Diego last week and was, a little more active than I have been so far. So this week I took the opportunity to try to rest a little bit because I'm hoping, like I said, next week to be able to start transitioning back into normal life. So I just wanted to make sure I gave my body some time this week to kind of rest and recover, which means that I finished up a lot of books. I had a couple books that I was like reading throughout the month. So I tried something a little bit different this month where because I was doing so many reading sprints, I just like read one specific book only during the reading sprints. So I had 2 books that it took me a little ways to get through, but those are both finished now. And then I finished a handful of other books, this week as well. So lots to talk about. So first of all, I finished Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. This was one of those books that I was reading for my reading sprints, and it's a collection of short stories. I also read In the Dream House last week as well, or at least I should say I finished it. Both of which, did I finish it this week? I finished it sometime this month. I thought it was in the last week, but maybe I'm blurring time together. Anyways, both of these were fantastic. This is Machado's memoir about being in an abusive relationship. And these are like horror-esque, kind of creepy short stories. Her writing is fantastic. If you haven't read her books, I highly recommend checking them out. I don't know if I have a favorite between the two, but it's really hard to compare and contrast because they're so drastically different. I will say that both of them are very prosy and lovely writing, but obviously pretty gruesome topics. One of the things that I found particularly interesting in this one is there is a short story, or like I guess more of a novella in here. This one especially heinous, and it is about Olivia Benson and Detective Stabler from Law and Order SVU. And it's one of the longer stories in this particular book. And so it's just like all these little vignettes about Detective Stabler and Detective Benson. So as somebody who used to binge watch Law and Order, and particularly Law and Order SVU as a kid, I found that really interesting. Well, I guess I shouldn't say as a kid, but like as a teenager. So that was kind of a cool method of storytelling there. I also finished Please Miss, A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Penis by Grace Lavery. So Grace Lavery is trans and works in a university, is an activist. And this book is their story, talks about a lot of different things. It's kind of a wild ride. I'm not sure that I got everything that this book talks about, but I did overall enjoy it. The audio of this was also fun. I listened to portions of it in audio, and it's narrated by a handful of different people. And so that kept things really interesting as well. And then I finished Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. So this was another book that I was reading through my reading sprints. This is interesting. So I picked this up in a recent book haul, like in my trip across the Southwest. One of the bookstores, I found this and I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. I think I had heard a couple reviews of it before. So I was like, oh, I kind of vaguely remember people like really liking it. And then after purchasing it, I saw 2 reviews of it from 2 different channels, people that I watch pretty frequently that were like, oh, it wasn't really that horror-y. It was kind of more political. And so I was kind of curious going into this, what I was going to think of it. So this is the story of a haunted house told from 3 perspectives. So we have one perspective who is a trans woman, one perspective who is a TERF, and then the perspective of the actual haunted house. And it's interesting because the trans woman and the TERF woman, the 2 of them used to actually date. And so there is some really like a really contentious situation between the 2 of them. They both allege that the other person sexually assaulted them. And they both have like scars from the attack to prove their side of the story. So it's really interesting. We start like farther in the timeline after this attack and all this bad stuff happened at this haunted house. And both of them are kind of reflecting on what happened and the damage that occurred to them and why they are the way they are now. And then we get these flashbacks to the actual haunted house and what happened. And you're kind of putting all these timelines together and flashing forward and flashing back. I actually do think this has quite a bit of a horror element to it. I won't say that it's the most traditional horror element. Like it does talk about a lot of political stuff. There is actually a trigger warning at the beginning of this that says that this book is about 2 things primarily, and those things are trauma and fascism. And I feel like that's pretty accurate. There is a lot of heavy discussion of fascism and, all sorts of different complex themes, which I think makes this a really interesting book. The horror narrative is the smallest narrative in the book. The focus is a lot more on the 2 main characters. But I did think that the horror narrative was creepy and horror-y. And there were some particularly gruesome scenes in this that really like made me cringe. I feel like I want to hear somebody smarter than me talk about this book because I just feel like there's so much to unpack with it. And I'm really going to have to think about what I want to talk about with it in terms of my end of the month wrap up. Then I finished My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. So I finished this like Friday, 2 or 3 p.m. And then we had our discussion of it at 5:30 p.m., at least my time, for the book club. And wow, this was an interesting book. So our main character in this book is a younger woman. She is relatively privileged. She's, healthy, good looking, and wealthy. And she's depressed because her parents have died and she had a really complex relationship with them. And it's brought up a lot of like trauma and just bad feelings. And so she decides that she is going to just sleep through an entire year to overcome this trauma. The thing is she's a terrible person and it is really hard to relate to her. This book really challenges your ability to empathize, I think, and it discusses a lot of different themes. We see a lot of really toxic relationships here. Just in general, it was a really interesting book, I felt like. That led to a fantastic discussion. Since we talked about it in such great depth, I'm not really going to discuss it much more than that here. Just suffice it to say that I enjoyed it, and it was a pretty interesting book for me. Now, I am ending the month with 2 books. One that I think I'm going to finish today, like after I get off of this live stream, I'll probably knock out the last bit. And the other one that I unfortunately do not think I'll be able to finish this month, but I will probably finish in the next month. I'm just going to like continue, roll it over right into July. So the one that I'm probably not going to be able to finish before the end of the month is Bola by Pajtim Statovci. So I did start this. I am like maybe 30 pages in, so not very far. Unfortunately, I just don't think I'm going to be able to finish both of these books before the end of June, but I will just keep reading this as July starts. And then I am currently reading Valentine by Elizabeth Wetmore. This is the book that I think I'm going to be able to finish before the end of today. And this was my pick for June on the Range, or one of them. I'm really enjoying this so far. This is about a bunch of women living in an oil town in Texas, and some of the trials that they have to experience living in such a hostile environment. I was really pulled in by the start of this book. It starts with a bang for sure. And I felt immediately invested in the characters. So I'm moving through this pretty quickly. I definitely anticipate I should be able to bang out that like last 100 pages before the end of the month. So that is everything that I read this week, or started this week. And now to talk about the things that I am planning to read in the first week of July. So for July, I do not have a specific TBR theme. I am going to pick out a bunch of books and then just read the things that I'm really excited about. That's basically my theme, is like the books that I'm most excited about. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I just did a massive clean out of my bookshelves. I hauled a bunch of books from San Diego, so I had to do a bunch of organizing and everything. And so that gave me the opportunity to like sit and look at my books and go, what am I super excited to read? And then I put that on my TBR for July. So it's a massive TBR for July. I don't expect to read every single thing that I picked out. You'll see all of that in my TBR video tomorrow. But the books that I'm anticipating reading in the first week of July. So like I said, I'm going to finish up Bola first, since I'm already partially into it. But one of the books I'm really excited about is Tender is the Flesh by Agostina Basterica. So this is a book I've been hearing so much about. You can't really get on any bookish social media and not hear about this particular book. This is a translated fiction out of Argentina, and essentially there is a virus that makes all animal meat like deadly to humans. And so humans start farming other humans for meat. And I think it follows a character who works in like the human farms and his ethical dilemmas. I have heard that this is like gruesome, grotesque, horrifying, but it also sounds super interesting and thought-provoking. This is a subject that really interests me because I'm in the food industry. Not that I want to eat human meat or anything like that, but just the concept of like not being able to eat animal meat anymore, and like, you know, instead of just going vegan, like replacing it with human meat. I think that's a fascinating topic. So I'm really looking forward to this one. This is a pretty short read. It is only like 210 pages long. And I anticipate that I'm just going to burn through this one like in 1 or 2 sittings. Then one of my so this is a book that I was so excited about that was coming out this year. I've known for almost a year that this book was going to release, and I have been like eagerly awaiting it. And it dropped at the beginning of June. So there's the Between the Earth and Sky series by Rebecca Roanhorse. That is, the first book is Black Sun. And this is like maybe my favorite fantasy series right now. Or ever. I've really been enjoying it. I love the characters that have been created, the worlds that's been created. It's just such an engaging, engrossing series, so complex. There's just a lot going on. And so the third and final book of that series dropped June 4th. So I actually was going to go out and buy it on release day, but I saw that there was a giveaway through the publishers of this book. And I was like, well, I've entered their giveaways before. I've never won anything. I've actually entered for this particular book before and never won anything. And so I just was like, well, I'll put my name in for it. And then, you know, I'll just go buy it on release day. And lo and behold, I actually ended up winning an ARC copy of it. So this is Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. I love the cover of this. This is just absolutely stunning. And then today, when I was shooting my TBR video, I actually opened it up and realized it is also a signed copy. So I am even more excited about it. This is just beautiful. I was a little sad that it got a little bit bent up in the shipping process, but I'm still just so thrilled. This is a long book. You can see it is a chunker. This might take me a little while to read. It's about 600 pages, but I'm really invested in this world, and I'm just so excited to delve into it and see how this story is going to conclude. I haven't heard any reviews of it yet. I'm trying to avoid reviews of it because I don't want it to be spoiled for me. But yeah, definitely want to get to it this week. And then another book that I'm super excited about, I also picked up recently here in Las Vegas. I checked out a New to Me bookstore here, and I saw this on display. I was super excited. It's Friday Black by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. So this is the same author as who wrote Changing All Stars, which was my favorite book of 2023. This was his debut, and it is short stories. This is a pretty short read. It's less than 200 pages, and it's a pretty small book. But all of the short stories in this are going to be dealing with the violence and injustice and the painful absurdities that Black men and women contend with every day in this country. His writing tends to be really sharp critique of, things in America. And I'm really looking forward to getting into this. I think that this is going to be fantastic. I've heard rave reviews about the short story collection. I've also been on like a huge short story collection kick lately. I started last year, like at the beginning of last year, with some collections by Yoon Lee. And like prior to that, I had never really been that into short stories. And those two collections were really good. And then I picked up The Office of Historical Corrections by Daniel Evans. That was really good. And it just kind of led me on this spiral of amazing books. I read like Never Whistle at Night at the end of the year last year, just lots and lots of really good short story collections. And so now I'm finding that I'm like actively seeking out these little short story collections and really enjoying them. And the final book that I'm hoping to get to next week is another one of those releases that I have just eagerly been anticipating. It's one that I bought on the day that it released, not necessarily intentionally, but I was doing that bookstore crawl in San Diego that I mentioned. I walked into a bookstore and saw it on the display table. I was like, oh man, that was releasing today. I got to get it. And so that is Little Rot by Akwaeke Emezi. I have read everything except for one of Emezi's books. I think it was Pet that I haven't read yet, but everything else I've read of theirs, and I've pretty much enjoyed all of them, some of them more than others. But I love that Emezi's writing is really thoughtful, thought-provoking. It can be really edgy and subversive, but it always has something important to say. I have basically avoided reading anything specific about this book just because I don't want to spoil it for myself. But I do know that this is kind of more of a horror theme, and I'm really, really looking forward to getting into it. Hey Sarah, how did you like Never Whistle at Night? I just bought it today. I really enjoyed it. With all short stories collections, I feel like there's some that you're gonna like more than others, and that was definitely the case there. There was one or two where I was like, I don't love this as much as I could, but I didn't find any of them terrible. I overall thought it was a pretty strong collection. There is a lot of like that horror-esque and fantasy elements, magical realism, and then that inclusion of indigenous culture made it super, super interesting. The authors that were involved in that book too, it's just like a powerhouse of authors. Rebecca Roanhorse, the author of Mirrored Heavens that I just mentioned there, was one of the people that wrote a story for the book. Stephen Graham Jones, like there's just like, I think he did the forward for it. Like it just, yeah, if you look at the list of authors, I was like, oh, this is so impressive. So hopefully you will enjoy it as well. I found it a pretty quick read. I kind of tried to read it like one story at a time and then ended up binging quite a few stories at once. So hopefully you'll enjoy it as well. So that is everything. We've talked about personal life, talked about channel updates, talked about what I've read and what I'm hoping to read. I think that is pretty much everything. The only other thing that I really wanted to mention is that in June, I had been doing reading sprints on Friday at 2 p.m. Because I haven't been working. And so I was like, cool, let me do some extra reading sprints. But in July, I am planning to go back to work again, part-time, and then hopefully transitioning back to full-time as my body is able to tolerate it. So that means that I will no longer be able to do Friday reading sprints. It's okay, because I think a lot of people weren't able to do them consistently anyways. But I'm going to be experimenting with maybe doing Thursday night reading sprints. I'm looking at maybe 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursdays. That way, like the majority of people are off of work. It's towards the end of the night when you're like transitioning into getting to sleep. So, reading before bed works really well. So look for those coming up in July. We'll try that time period out and see how that works. And if it doesn't work, maybe I'll just stick to the Mondays only. Or, I can always try a different time. But hopefully that'll work for more people, and I'll see some people joining in on the reading sprints. Hope everybody is having a really good Sunday and that you have a great week coming up. I will be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. to do reading sprints. So if you happen to be around, feel free to grab some coffee or tea and join in on those. Otherwise, I hope you have a great week full of really good books, lots of rest, and hopefully good weather. We're dying of like 110-degree weather over here. So I hope everybody else, it's like more temperate where you're at. So thank you for everyone that stopped in, and I will see you soon.